Welcome. It's great to have you here. My name is Jonathan Foust, and I will be guiding the following meditation and offering the following talk. Tonight's topic is on equanimity, on cultivating steadiness. A few announcements before we begin. As always, we start with some thank yous. A big thank you to Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo for producing this event. And a big thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for being a host, and as well to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington in Arlington, Virginia, which has been the physical home of Monday Night Meditation for many years, and hopefully will again when that occurs. Also, a big thank you to our mindful movement teachers. If you're not familiar with this, it's a great way to kind of prepare yourself for meditation. We have three great teachers of Rita, Anna, and Lynn. And afterward, we have mindful dialogue, which is an opportunity to connect with like-minded people, to share about the talk, to share about your practice. And that's hosted by Ray Manioki and Tara Cassidy. If you'd like more information about how to access the full Monday night experience, you can check my website or my Facebook page, and you'll get all those appropriate Zoom links. Also, as I often point out, this is offered freely in the spirit of generosity. The practice of dana, or generosity, is really important to this particular tradition. The practices and teachings are considered priceless, therefore there's no charge. But just as they're offered freely, if you'd like to be of any support to ensure that these practices go out so that no one is ever denied access, you're more than welcome to do so. You can make a donation on my website. Thank you for that. Mostly, thank you for your practice and thank you for your presence. I just so appreciate being able to share this and to connect with people from all around the planet. Also, one last shameless self-promotional plug. I'm offering a day-long retreat on April 24th on Saturday, and it is about how to enliven intuition through meditation and inquiry. It's a really powerful day. It's very pragmatic. You'll learn some really cool tools for learning how to move beyond the rational mind to sort of open into insight and open into wisdom in particular ways that are helpful for you. Part of the day is very internal through meditation, through journaling, through reflection. But another important part of the day, and it's one of the few things we can do when we're in community, is there'll be time for sharing about what you've noticed in your own practice, the challenges, the insights, to hear from others. It's a very powerful way to practice, to actually be practicing consciously in community. So feel free to check that out. More information on my website as well. And with that shameless plug out of the way, let's prepare for meditation. Again, the theme for this talk is on equanimity. And equanimity speaks to a certain kind of steadiness, a quality of changelessness in the face of all that is changing. So I'll be offering a little bit of language around that. We'll start with a little bit of movement, and then we'll do some practices of concentration and gathering, opening into mindfulness, this realm of non-judging awareness, and exploring the sense of what it means to cultivate a sense of steadiness in your meditation practice. So if you like, feel free to reach your arms up overhead, stretch up to the left side, the right side, lift your chin up toward the ceiling, let out any sounds. If you like, let's do this. This is the old classic hands in hitchhiker position. Point the thumbs behind you. Bring your fists right about equal to your ears. Lengthen up through the torso. You can imagine you're drawing your navel in toward your spine, or feel your navel in toward your spine. And slowly, gently draw your shoulder blades close together. This is not about strain. It's about taking the slack out of these muscles that get chronically lengthened. And now slow down and deepen your breath. Actively draw the shoulder blades close together. If you like, you can lift the chin just slightly, maintaining the sense of contraction as you draw the shoulder blades together for 2 or let's say 3 more breaths. Imagine you're breathing your heart forward. Draw the breath up under the collarbones. Let the sensations build. And then as you're ready, you can reach the arms up overhead one more time. Lengthen through the left side and the right side. And then let your arms begin to float down toward your lap. And take a few moments just to allow yourself to relax and soften and feel. And without employing any particular technique, is it possible just to rest your attention right here and right now and notice everything that's happening? Notice the sounds, the texture of the air against your skin. Notice the sense of the light beyond your closed eyes. Any sense of smell. Just feeling the sense doors open. And can you feel or sense or imagine now a quality of attention? What is it that is aware right now? And you may notice how the more you relax, the more you feel. And the more you feel, the more you notice. And the more you notice, the more you begin to sense this quality of awareness. And it's helpful just to sense at any point as we move through in different ways of paying attention that fundamentally you can remember what it's like to relax and feel and to sense that which is awake and aware right now. You might find it helpful to slow down and deepen your breath now. Some find it helpful to, in the beginning of a meditation, to count the breath, perhaps on the next inhalation, counting to 4 or 5. And on the exhalation, matching the length of the exhalation, again, counting 4 or 5. And for these next few rounds of breath, just watch and feel the sense of the breath on the inside. This awareness of breath, of actually feeling the breath consciously on the inside, is a powerful way of drawing your attention inward. And you might sense very subtly on the out-breath, what could relax? What could soften inside? And as I mentioned, a body part, you might let your awareness move to that part of the body just to sense and feel what's there. The sense of softening, feeling, and noticing. The forehead smooth. The muscles around the eyes. and the muscles of the face, and the jaw, and sensing the inside of the mouth, the lips, in particular, and feeling the volume and the weight of your tongue. And the back of the head and the base of the skull. And the back of the neck and the tops of the shoulders. And you might now feel or imagine your arms heavy. And imagine the weight of the arms cultivating a deeper sense of relaxation, sensing down through the elbows, and down through the wrists. Awareness flooding into the backs of the hands. And palms. The fingers and thumbs. And sensing, feeling the space inside your lungs. And as you allow yourself to settle and relax even more, how delicately can you sense the movement of the diaphragm and rib cage as the body breathes easily and effortlessly? Sensing the lower back and the buttocks. The subtle movement of the belly as you soften the abdomen. And sensing the lower abdomen down through the floor of the pelvis. And sensing now the weight, the volume, the heaviness of your legs down through the knees, and down through the ankles. And the tops of the feet and the toes. And the soles of the feet and the heels. As you sense inside, is there anything right now that could soften? And you might notice how the more you investigate deep inner relaxation, the more you feel. And moving your attention to an anchor of your choosing, to breath or sound or the felt sense in the palms. Embracing the sense of deep inner relaxation and awareness of the aliveness here at the point of your anchor, and sensing at the same time that which is aware, that which is observing. When you notice the mind lost in thought, gently direct your attention back and again relax and feel from the inside the point here at your anchor, a breath or sound or feeling. A fundamental aspect of this practice is this practice of re-arriving in presence, to soften, to feel, to return again to this direct experience of the breath or sound or feeling inside. Noticing what's happening inside as it's happening. And you may notice as you continue to re-arrive and re-relax and receive the moment that in different ways your attention is pulled away. You may notice this pull towards something you imagine as pleasurable. This energy of wanting or desire. And you may notice as well that something arises that you'll find yourself pushing away, judging, making something wrong. And you might just sense in your own way, if it's possible to feel or imagine, if just for a moment, a quality of awareness without preference, awareness without judgment, your capacity to let all things be just as they are. And you may find, depending on your inner state, that you might from time to time widen and broaden your awareness. Awake to the stream of phenomena, to the field of change. And sensing this seat of the witness, your capacity to be intimately present, but at the same time deeply allowing, relaxed, and alert. It can be helpful to refresh the practice from time to time, just sensing this foundational awareness of relaxed inner presence. You might again feel your face expressionless. You might relax your tongue and let your tongue fill your lower jaw. And can you feel the weight and the heaviness of your arms? And you might let your awareness flood into the palms and fingers and thumbs. And as you relax and sense and feel, how intimately can you sense here any pulse or tingling, vibration, subtle energy? Could you soften your belly? The soles of the feet and the heels, sensing from the inside. Deeply relaxed. And you might, as you bring your attention to your anchor, to breath or sound or feeling, over the next 3 rounds of breath, how intimately can you experience it on the inside? Can you sense this seat of the observer? This quality of non-judging, non-grasping awareness. Awareness without preference. Intimately awake to what is happening, and at the same time allowing, opening to the stream or the flow of your experience and allowing things to be. In these remaining 3 minutes, you might explore allowing any sense of doing, any sense of focus or concentration to begin to fall away. Is it possible to open to a sense of being, a sense of resting intimately in presence? As you sense the movement of sensation, the movement of thought, the movement of mood, is there anything right now that could soften or relax or let go? And is there anything right now that could soften or relax or let go even more? And you might, in these remaining moments, notice where you feel the breath on the inside. And you might very, very gently lengthen the breath just a little bit and explore this paradox of intimate connection to the senses. And at the same time, a vast sense of allowing, letting be. And as you're ready, you might very, very gently, with the eyes closed, let your head drift a little bit to the left and to the right. And then you can invite the movement all through your body. Let your body begin to move, stretch in any way that feels really good for you. Take your time for your transition. There's no hurry, there's no rush. You might like to, again, reach your arms up overhead, reach up to the left side, the right side, let out any sounds. And welcome. It's a story of a pastor giving a sermon, and the sermon is on forgiveness. And so he asks his parishioners, how many of you have forgiven your enemies? And about 80% raised their hand. And he turned toward this very, very sweet old lady, one of the elders in the church, 94 years old. And she said, well, what about you, Mrs. Johnson? Are you willing to forgive your enemies? And she very sweetly says, I have no enemies. And he said, we all need inspiration in this life, and I wonder if you'd be willing to come up and share with us. So she kind of gets up and kind of totters, up to the front to turn toward the congregation. And he says, can you tell us in this long life that you've lived of what it's like and what you've done to have no enemies? And she looks up and she raises her fist up in the air and she says, I outlived them all. They're all dead. This talk is about equanimity, the 10th of the 10 perfections. And that's one way to cultivate equanimity or steadiness, is just wait till everyone you don't like dies. That could work. We're going to explore a little bit about how to cultivate equanimity internally. That's not dependent on the externals. Other names for equanimity, mental calm, an evenness of temper, serenity. And I've always loved, in Jerry Seinfeld of, serenity now. It's such a paradox around just declaring serenity now, and it's here. It takes a little more of a delicate process to cultivate equanimity. It's really considered the flower of practice. It's kind of the essence of what arises when everything is kind of aligned. One nice definition I like is that this 10th of the 10th perfections is the steady, conscious realization of reality's transience. So it's a steady realization of change, that all things change. And of course, an acceptance of that change. So when it comes to looking at the answers to life's important questions, it's important that we pause and we look at different systems and different perspectives. And this has been a kind of a long series on the 10 perfections, which are really seen as these reflections of the true self. As was said, the fruit of spiritual practice is the byproduct of your non-judging awareness. A sense of serenity and equanimity that can arise. And when it's all said and done, just to share the punchline with you here, equanimity is not about being detached and aloof, but it's a mind filled with abundance and awareness of the immeasurable without any hostility or ill will. So what goes into cultivating equanimity? It shows up all through the teachings as the flower, the kind of the fruit, the kind of the essence of it. What we have done over these last weeks is reflecting at the different actions, the different speech, the different thoughts in regard to these different qualities of the 10 perfections, and just to review them, to reflect on your capacity for generosity, kind of recognizing that to be generous is to loosen the boundary between yourself and other, your capacity to sense what other people need and to respond to it. The second of these 10 perfections has to do with your behavior, to kind of align your actions with what's most important in your life. This quality of kind of virtuosity is, again, it's not so much of a thou shalt not. It's sort of looking at what do I really want and what are the behaviors that are going to be most skillful to help me move toward there. The third of these is renunciation, which is when you know what you want, how consciously can you let go of everything that takes you away from that? And again, there are different qualities of these teachings and different interpretations. The thou shalt nots, as opposed to that sense of releasing what's between you and what you most want, releasing and letting go of those actions and thoughts. The next quality is cultivating wisdom and insight. When you cultivate an inner generosity, when you align your behaviors, when you let go of what's between you and what you most want, then you begin to see more clearly. So it's cultivating that quality of clear seeing. The next has to do with sort of a quality of diligence, because the path of awakening can be brutal and hard, and there are challenges. So there's a certain amount of resilience that's required, and also a sense of, I like to think of as energy management. How do you manage your life energy units so that you can really move toward what you most want in your life? Kind of the counterbalance of cultivating diligence is cultivating patience. It takes time. It's a marathon. And as you continue down your path, the next quality to cultivate is truthfulness. The willingness to really know and see what is true. And that means getting under your story, your preferences, your conditioning, to see what is absolutely deeply true. And as you continue to kind of unpeel the onion of your life, looking at what is true, then you need to call on determination, a kind of a resolution to kind of stay with it, because it gets more and more subtle and more challenging in different ways. And the ninth of these is loving kindness. That it's one thing to see what's true. It's one thing to see into the nature of reality. But it's another to cultivate a heart that can match it, that can hold it. So that quality of loving kindness is kindness towards self, but also kindness toward others. And when all these come together, they come into this possibility of serenity. And again, you can't make serenity or equanimity happen. All you can do is cultivate the most optimal environment for it to arise. And what I have really come to know in my years of fumbling around with these practices, that there's a big difference between kind of an intellectual knowing of these qualities and the actual embodiment of these qualities. It's the difference between reading the menu and actually eating the food. Generosity is important, but the actual experience of giving, it's visceral. It's something very, very profound inside. So each one of these little windows into the nature of self becomes a very, very rich way of training your attention and becoming more self-aware. Because it really is about realizing your true nature. It all comes down to realizing who and what you really are. Sometimes who and what you really are is described as the absence of the defilements. That is to say, when there's no clouds in the sky, you become more aware of the light. But it's also about cultivating compassionate presence and surrendered presence. It's about waking up to awareness itself, which is such a fascinating part of the practice, and a whole area I find so fascinating for myself. As we explore letting go of our conditioning, we start to become more aware of the unconditioned. And the unconditioned is such a fascinating place to look. Equanimity is about steadiness in the midst of change. And sensing who you are when the obstacles, the resistance to life isn't there. So what I'd like to talk about is just number one, to kind of honor the call, this calling to practice. We're all aware, I think, at some point that there's something beyond the weather systems of the mind. There's something beyond the weather system of all the moods that pass through. Second, to talk about the process of seeing more clearly, kind of the journey of actively engaging in the practice. And third, I'd like to talk about kind of the arrival, or what we could call like the glimpses when you see into your true nature. And fourth, how do you remember when you have these moments of serenity, these moments of deep inner peace? How do you cultivate that and keep that alive in your practice? So we're awake to change. We're awake to moods. And a long, long time ago, I was in high school. My dad, who's a college professor, had a sabbatical, and he and my mother bought a VW camper in Germany, and they traveled all around Europe for 6 months. And I joined them for about a month in Great Britain. And my parents were really into visiting abbeys and, looking at architecture. So we would go to these, ruined abbeys in these beautiful locations. And it was amazing to see, basically it was just the skeleton of what were very, very alive communities for generations. But we also went to some mansions, and these were really beautiful estates. And I was struck by this one place where, as we were given our tour, that the people who built this gigantic estate, this husband and wife, they were very, very formal, and they had their own chambers. They kind of each had their own wing of the house. And she would communicate to him what kind of mood she was in by how she placed a pillow on a particular divan. So if the pillow was lengthwise, that meant keep your distance. And if it was on end, it was basically saying, I'm willing to entertain and maybe suffer your presence. And apparently there was another position of the pillow that suggested the possibility of, shall we say, the intention to create heirs to their lineage. And I just love that. Just the self-awareness of here's what I'm feeling and here's the pillow that expresses it. And we all have moods. We're all subject to our moods. It's amazing to see, like little kids, just how quickly they can move from rage to laughter. You can see the weather systems across their face. We have those same moods, but I think we're sort of trained to sort of tamp them down a little bit. But there's so many emotions, and I think, mostly raised as a American male, I had access to like happy, sad, mad, and glad. But some of the thoughts, here's some of the moods: positive moods, amused, blissful, calm, cheerful, content, dreamy, ecstatic, energetic, excited. That's just going through the E's. It goes on and on and on. If you're interested in just looking at the moods, there's some really interesting lists online, and different examples of some negative moods: angry, annoyed, apathetic, cranky, depressed, envious, frustrated, gloomy, grumpy, guilty. That's just through the G's. How many moods do you imagine you experience today? If you were to imagine your top 3 moods, what would they be today? Moods are like weather systems. They kind of move through. They color our experience, and then quite often we identify with that weather system. And some moods are based on externals, and they kind of have their own wave. Coffee tends to put me in a good mood, unless it's too much, and then I'm in a bad mood and I get irritable. Sugar can get you into a good mood, but then you're going to crash, then you'll be in a bad mood. Getting what you want can put you in a good mood, but if you lose it, bad mood. And often, your car won't start. You're in a bad mood. Someone sends you a thank you note. Oh, you're in a good mood. Someone cuts you off when you're driving. Bad mood. Your tax bill is smaller than you expected. Ooh, good mood. So much of our life is externally focused and therefore subject to external conditions for our happiness. And when we're not aware, all we are is simply a reaction machine. All we're doing is simply reacting to what's happening. Stimulus response, stimulus response, stimulus response. What slowing down and paying attention does, of course, is it opens up that gap. It opens up the gap between stimulus and response. And so in the psychology of Buddhism looks really, really intimately and closely at how we are subject to external conditions. And on a broader sense, there's this recognition that not only our moods, but our life is often designed around essential fears and essential desires. We all want to feel successful. We all want to feel healthy. We all want to feel respected. We all want to win. And conversely, we all fear failure. We all fear sickness. We all fear shame and blame. And so, therefore, our lives are run to get what we want and avoid what we don't want. To the degree that you are focused and run by those, to that same degree you will be trapped. And it becomes quite paradoxical because I have met a lot of people who are very, very successful, very, very healthy, very, very respected in this world, and are driven by that fear, the fear of failure and the fear of shame. So it points toward this possibility of some chance that it might be possible to have an experience of happiness, an experience of serenity and equanimity that is actually not dependent on the externals. And this becomes a really interesting part of practice. Is it possible to have a sense of happiness and serenity that is completely independent of what's going on? This points toward freedom, and I think it's fair to say this points toward liberation. And there's always this eternal question, because when you read about spiritual practitioners of the past, there are these great stories of like enlightenment. Suddenly the lights come on and seeing clearly and you're done. And then, of course, there are the not so sexy stories of the gradual awakening. And so it becomes this question, do we awaken in a blinding flash, or is it a gradual process? And I tend to think that while we get insights and we get glimpses, for most of us, it's gradual. And for many people, when you really start to slow down and call on mindfulness and this the sincerity of wanting to wake up, there's low-hanging fruit. You realize you begin to see into the kind of the conditions that make you unhappy, and then you see those and you start to feel more happy. You start to recognize belief systems that just aren't true, and then you feel more freedom. And then for many, the practice then becomes more subtle after picking that low-hanging fruit. The first month-long retreat I went to was one of the most intense and dramatic months of my life. So many powerful insights. It really helped to kind of redirect my life. And a couple years later, I went back for a second month-long retreat, a month all in silence, dedicated to practice, very, very structured. And not so much came out of that. But then a couple months after I got home and just kind of got back into the routine of my life, my wife, Tara, said, "You're less anxious." And I realized it's true. Something kind of softened inside. I love the line from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of TM, who said, "You water the root and enjoy the fruit." Bring yourself, rest in presence, and it'll begin to nourish every aspect of who you are. And I've certainly found that to be true. We get these glimpses. We get these intimations of true nature. So I thought I would lead just a very, very short reflection. If you like, you can close your eyes. And you might, with your eyes closed, just take 3 slow and full breaths. There are many doorways that point toward these glimpses. And one of them is reflecting on gratitude. You might just take a moment as you relax and feel. And just sense just one thing you're grateful for in your life. One thing you deeply appreciate. You might imagine it in the mind. You can visualize it. And then sense if you can translate that into where you feel it on the inside. What does gratitude feel like? Can you locate that? Can you make room for that? And over this next minute, just sense, is it possible to deepen the breath and imagine that feeling of gratitude kind of expanding through your body? And just to explore the following question for just a few moments. Can you imagine this inner feeling of gratitude, completely independent of externals? Can you imagine feeling grateful for no reason? If you like, you can deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. I find this distinction between happiness dependent on externals and happiness independent of externals so helpful. And I'm reminded by something the teacher Sokni Rinpoche said, that when he lived in the monastery as a young boy, the basic teaching he got was to be happy for no reason. And I've really come to really love that phrase. Is it possible to be happy for no reason whatsoever? And we see that when we see children play or watch puppies play. We've all had that experience, and it becomes a very interesting question. Can I cultivate this inner state independent of the externals? So it's said that practice is twofold. The first is to notice what's happening as it's happening. As I breathe in, I'm aware of breathing in. As I breathe out, I'm aware of breathing out. That deep connection, moment-to-moment connection of what's actually happening. Then the second element, which points toward mindfulness and points toward liberation, is being aware of your relationship to what's happening. Is it possible to be aware of the filter through which you're perceiving? The filter of wanting, or the filter of aversion, or the filter of confusion. It's not so much the event that's happening as how you're relating to it. And so when you explore equanimity, this quality of allowing steadiness, it's all about how you're relating to what's happening. As Ajahn Chah, the Jack Kornfield's teacher, considered a real meditation master, would say when he would sit with people in his community who were practicing, when they would be talking about their suffering, he would say, "You have rope burn. You're hanging on to the rope. Let go of the rope." So this ephemeral state of serenity, this ephemeral state of equanimity is so juicy. It's so desirable. This preferenceless awareness, to be without desire. Again, we glimpse it, we sense it. It's really, really sexy. And the question becomes, well, then how do we cultivate it? And of course, there are different ways that you can cultivate it. And you cultivate it through training. One way of training yourself is training yourself to be present. Just training yourself to be here. And this calls on concentration or focus. This is that willful practice of noticing when your mind is lost and bringing it back, re-arriving. And why I find it so helpful in that re-arriving to really relax. Is it possible to make re-arriving pleasurable? As a lot of these studies on habit, that if you want to cultivate a sense of pleasure around change, what you want to do is to bring in a kind of a yes when you notice when you do it, like you pump your fist when you do it. Now, not that you would pump your fist in meditation, but it's like when you notice the mind is lost, can you bring in a little inner smile? Can you make that a little moment of celebration? Like, oh, I'm awake in the here and now. Isn't that amazing? I just woke up out of the trance of thinking. That re-arriving, amazing things happen when you become more and more and more awake to what is here. But of course, it goes beyond just concentration. And that is this developing of the observer, developing of the witness, developing your capacity to simply be aware, the sense of the witness, the observer. When you can see what's happening and see how you're relating to it, this sets you up for this whole realm of insight, when you can begin to see really deeply into your conditioning. All the conditioning that goes into stimulus and response. All the ways you move into self-protection. All the ways you get caught in desire and wanting. That sense of really seeing the filter through which you're perceiving can provide tremendous insights and tremendous new possibilities in your life. And then from there are times when you might get that sense of who you are without a filter, who you are in the absence of greed, who you are in the absence of hatred, who you are in the absence of confusion. Those moments are so ephemeral, and yet they're so real. In the absence of desire, the moment can come fully and deeply alive. And we begin to get these glimpses into awareness itself. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about those glimpses. And this is usually where I tell a story about something in my own practice. And I kind of get bored with myself. But I wanted to share with you kind of some other stories that people have described in these moments of sensing who they are without this filter of reactivity. But here's the problem with these stories is that as they describe their experience, it kind of sounds like they're stoned out of their gourds. And yet, there's something so ephemeral and so powerful. And again, if you've had any sense of the mystery, any sustained sense of who you are without desire, all the paradoxes come alive, and there's this space that can hold the paradoxes. So I'd like to share a couple of these with you, just because there's a little bit of a transmission in them, I think, when we kind of go into the willing suspension of disbelief. If you like, you can close your eyes. Just sort of imagine this. Here's someone sharing a moment of glimpsing. I saw a tree blooming in the parking lot. It was early spring. And it was as if I had never seen a tree before in my life. It appeared to be glowing, pulsating, radiating energy and beauty. I could feel that it was alive. It was breathing the same air as me and moving to the same energy and life force. And here's another. Again, this glimpse. It was as if I did not exist. There was no ego. There was no me, no boundaries. I was part of everything and everything. We are all part of everything. I also realized that I was tiny, absolutely minuscule in the largest, most vast and unknowable universe. And another. It was a hollowing out of the solidness and the physicalness of perceived reality. It felt less and less like solid material world and more like wisps of dream stuff. I felt less and less like a body and more like a free-floating cluster of sensations. And a final one here. Objects disappeared, and so did I as their subject. What remained was simply pure experiencing. Seeing, hearing, feeling, smelling, tasting, and thinking. Pure, undivided consciousness. If you like, you can open your eyes. And I find when I read those stories, those little glimpses, there's something in me that's kind of filled with doubt. It sounds like too many bong hits. But at the same time, I believe those experiences are true. I've experienced many of those moments. Those moments of non-ordinary consciousness they're very, very hard to translate. If you've ever heard about the book called On Mysticism by Evelyn Underhill, it was written a couple hundred years ago. It was an exploration of all the different mystics. And the basic punchline of the book is all these mystics from all these different traditions, from all over the planet, over all the ages, all had the same transcendent moment. And then as they tried to describe it, they described it according to their age, their sex, their temperament, their tradition, their culture. This sense of deep, deep serenity has something to do with a sense of self being disbanded, a sense of desire being disbanded, a sense of judgment disbanded, a sense that all is forgiven, that everything is changing, and an allowing of that change. So I'd like to share with you a few phrases that can be helpful. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes. And these are some words that have come through the centuries. And you might let these words just flow through your awareness. Just sense how they resonate. Some may feel like a match, some maybe not. May I be balanced and at peace. May I acknowledge that all created things arise and pass away. Joys, sorrows, people, buildings, animals, nations, even civilizations. May I rest in the midst of this change. May I learn to see the arising and passing of all nature with steadiness and balance. May I recognize that all beings are heirs to their own karma, and that their lives arise and passing away following the conditions and deeds created by them. May I learn to love and care for others. In relationship with others, may I remember these phrases. Your happiness and suffering depend on your thoughts and actions and not my wishes for you. And you might take a moment to wish peace and equanimity for any specific people you know. Reflecting on the following phrases. May you learn to see the arising and passing of things with equanimity and balance. May you be balanced and peaceful. And you might imagine in these final moments just sensing your capacity to bring compassion and equanimity into your world, to find balance and peace and serenity amidst all that changes. If you like, you can gently deepen your breath. And if you like, you can open your eyes. This ephemeral sense of serenity, again, is not anything that we can make happen. What we do have control over is exploring the conditions, the inner conditions we can create for it to arise. And what we have in these teachings are this quality of remembering. The word sati means to remember. Anapanasati is to remember the breath, and remembering the breath is more than the breath. It's remembering the here and now. It's remembering that there's nothing outside of here and now. It's remembering the three characteristics of reality, remembering that all things change. It's about remembering that your relationship to what is changing directly determines the level of stress that you'll experience. It's about remembering that who you are is awareness itself. As well, it's about remembering how you can call on the refuges when you feel lost. The first refuge of the Buddha, the direct translation of Buddha is awake, taking refuge in wakefulness. The second, taking refuge in Dharma. The translation of Dharma is truth. That's independent of any tradition. What is absolutely true? Taking refuge in truth. And taking refuge in Sangha. And the translation of Sangha is maybe in its essence love. At any time when you feel lost, you can be awake now. You can sense what is true now. You can open to a sense of loving presence now. These become helpful as we explore our true nature and this unfolding into the realization of deep inner truth. So we'll close with a short little reading. Again, if you like, you can close your eyes, you can slow down your breath. The surest test, if you are sane, is if you accept life whole as it is, without needing by measure or touch to understand the measureless, untouchable source of all its images, the measureless, untouchable source of its substances, the source which, if it appears dark emptiness, brims with a quick force farthest away and yet nearest at hand, from the oldest time unto this day, charging its images with origin. What more do you need to know of origin than this? The surest test, if you are sane, is if you accept life whole as it is. You might very gently now just sense the breath and sense this companion. Imagine the body as an ally. And whenever you awaken and feel on the inside, you arrive here and now. And sensing this quality of non-judging awareness, your capacity to be awake to not only what is changing, but your relationship to it. And sensing of just for a moment of what it is like to release all striving, to release all sense of doing, to deeply relax, to widen your awareness 360 degrees, to rest in presence, and to sense the mystery, and in your own way to love the mystery of your life. As you're ready, you can gently deepen your breath. As you're ready, you can open your eyes. So equanimity, steadiness, this quality of serenity that is independent of externals, It is an ephemeral goal, and yet it is something that is truly already here when we can set the conditions and remember. It's been such a pleasure to share these teachings with you. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I truly hope you have found them helpful, and many, many blessings in your journey and beyond. Take good care.